Welcome to the number one show and the source of truth for all things MedTech. Here, we reveal the secrets and stories behind the investments, science, and commercialization of the MedTech industry. Every week, we'll take you on a wild ride with the biggest names in the game, from entrepreneurs and investors who are shaking up the market to healthcare providers who are revolutionizing the way we think and practice medicine. So hold on tight and get ready for a journey like no other. This is the State of MedTech. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show, and this is an episode with a fantastic sales rep who I feel like you're going to learn quite a lot from. It's somebody who also I'm very proud to say is a member of the Medical Sales Network Effects program, which is essentially a elite training program on how to do medical sales at scale using digital channels such as social media, and that's Gyda Loveras. So Gyda first started out my program last summer, and I think back then she had maybe like 9,000 Instagram followers and I think maybe 90 or 80 LinkedIn followers. And within a period of 6 or 7 months has just absolutely taken off. She went from being an independent distributor to now working in a really prestigious position and the world's largest medical device company, Medtronic, and along the way has just done such a great job developing her own market, creating a professional brand, and of course sharing her knowledge with others. So fast forward to today, Gyda's got about, and I'm checking on LinkedIn, 3,654 followers, which is a huge jump. So breaking I think over 1,000 followers puts you into the 1% of all users on LinkedIn. And then her Instagram, which, again, in my program, we've covered a few things on Instagram, but not that much. That was really all her. She's got over 20,000 followers on there. And the reason why is that she just creates such fantastic clinical content, and she does such a great job leading with a strong professional brand. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Gyda was born and raised in the Philippines, and her parents owned multiple businesses such as a tire shop, a restaurant, a jewelry store. But in spite of all that, life as they knew it in a third world country was pretty unpredictable. And between school tuitions, mortgage payments, and everyday living expenses for a family of 6, her family barely broke even. So her parents knew in that moment that a major change had to happen. And in 2000, their efforts paid off as her dad was asked to take a job here in the U.S. 8 months later, they purchased a one-way ticket, and after a long 13-hour flight that they never looked back, they landed here in the United States. She came here when she was 18 years old, and like many immigrants, she was scared. She didn't have any friends. She barely spoke any English. But in spite of all that, she was determined to work hard, meet people, and adapt quickly. And so that's exactly what she did. First thing she did was go back to school and get another degree. And she felt that that was the most efficient way to meet people, learn the language, and adapt to American culture. She also started a school organization called FWBO, which stands for Future Women in Business Organization, to help educate women who want to start their own businesses in the future. Now, her next goal was to figure out a career that would satisfy two things: self-sufficiency and helping others. And so she went from working at a bank to becoming a personal trainer and nutritionist, and then found her way into the medical sales industry. Her first year in medical sales reminded her of the same feeling she had when she first came to the U.S. She was scared. It was intimidating, exciting, but also fascinating. And one of her favorite moments was learning extensively about pediatric deformity in spine and being able to work with such a knowledgeable, hardworking team at the Phoenix Children's Hospital. A decade later, she's been blessed to be working in the same industry, constantly learning new technologies, and made this really fascinating jump from not only being in spine, but now working in the neuro side as well. And specifically, again, she went from small independent distributorship to now largest med device company on planet Earth, who actually sought her out. And so all these things happened because of the amount of work and effort she put in. Granted, I'm very proud to have somebody like this come out of my program. But, these are the kind of things that happen when you take a radically different approach to medical sales. And, last thing I'll say before we jump into the episode, one of my, really early in my business when I started the program, now we got, well over a few hundred people in the program. Back when Gyda joined, I think we had maybe 10 or 20. Gyda had this great testimonial where she posted a month or two after implementing these strategies that she got this message from a spine surgeon out of the blue on LinkedIn asking to know more about her business. And I mention this because it shows that if you put in the work, if you find a way to differentiate yourself, to provide value, to educate people, entertain people, people will seek you out for jobs, to come on their team. They'll seek you out for business, like in this case of the surgeon. And so all that being said, Gyda has an incredibly bright future. And more importantly, she's a fantastic member of the Medical Sales Network Effects program where, she's really inspired others to take on a radically new way of selling in medtech and, doing things digitally that scale. And so I want to have her on to sort of talk more about her experience, her advice to other reps, and, learn more about how she got to this point in her career. And for those who are interested, if you want to see if you qualify for that program, I'd love to have you interview for it. So just check the show notes below and click the meeting link. You'll book time with my team to get a free LinkedIn profile consult and then learn more about the program and see if you qualify for it. And again, I would only click that link if you're really ready to level up and put in the kind of work that Gyda put in to get to that next level and get the results that you want to get. So that being said, here is our interview with Gyda Loveras. Enjoy. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I have a very special guest today, someone who I've developed a great friendship with over the last couple years, but also somebody who is a member of my program, which we'll get into, and that's Gyda Loveras. Gyda, thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Omar. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm super excited to have you on the show. And, one of the reasons why I want to have you on is that, you're somebody with a really interesting dynamic career. You were, and we're going to get into those details, but, you were in a distributorship. Now you're working for one of the larger, big name, big brand med tech companies out there. And so part of this, I want to cover like your journey and your story, but also, there's a lot of young reps out there who follow you. And of course, for those who are listening, if you're not already, go ahead and connect with Gyda. I'm leaving her LinkedIn profile below in the show notes, but also find her on Instagram. So, I think like when you and I first connected last year, your Instagram following was pretty good. It was like, I think 8,000 or 9,000, but now I think you're like well over 25,000. So like you've just done such a great job with your professional brand on LinkedIn and Instagram. And so I want to cover that, but let's start with the first thing, which is like, who is Gyda Loveras? Like, what's your backstory?
Yeah, well, I'm actually originally from the Philippines. And, you know this about me. I moved to the States when I was 19 years old. And when I first moved here, I really didn't speak great English. So it took me a little bit of time to really learn the language, understand the culture, and really adapt, And I think like that's the biggest part of my story. I've always been adapting to everything, from like growing up to moving to the U.S., speaking the new language, to getting into medical spine space, speaking a new language, to now my new industry, which I'm speaking another language, So yeah.
That's amazing. And and one thing, I mean, again, I'm being somebody who's a first generation immigrant and my wife's immigrant, like there's something to be said about like the immigrant mentality, especially coming here to the States, of just like taking advantage of everything you have, you can get your hands on and working hard, and then everything else follows. How much of your upbringing and what your parents taught you kind of contributed to your success?
A lot. I mean, my mom was like, she's like a super person. I mean, I look up to my mom so much. She definitely, she went from being a stay-at-home mom, taking care of 4 kids, to then my dad lost his job at one point, and my mom had to like wear the big pants and took over, and like launch her career. She was in sales. I think she was selling insurance. And and my dad like took on the mom role. So it's amazing seeing my parents are dynamic, and it's all about survival in the family, and I love that. So that has always been my mentality is, you learn to survive and keep adapting.
Yeah. And there's something, I mean, again, having growing up in the medical community, I met a lot of Filipino doctors, a lot of Filipino nurses, and I would say like this is a very like Filipino thing, which is just like whatever it takes to survive. Like, am I right in saying that culturally?
It's so true. It's so true. Whatever it takes. And it's funny that you said that because my mom always wanted me to be a nurse, and I told her this is probably going to be the closest to a nurse that I would be. I'm still in the medical device. It's still medical, right?
There is something there because like I remember when I was a medical student and everything, the hospital I was at, there were a lot of Filipino nurses, and I just like particularly noticed that Filipino nurses, and I asked surgeons about this at other hospitals, like their experience like with nurses who are Filipino, and that is just like they're extremely hardworking and resourceful, and they can just handle anything. Like it could be complete chaos, and there's something about like there's a cultural aspect to Filipino nurses where they're just like they can do anything, but they're also kind of like a gang. So like my dad even told me this, he's like you need to treat like the nurses really really well. He's like, but especially he's like the Filipino nurses, like either they're gonna love you and have your back, or you're gonna get thrown under the bus. So
Totally. We do it with a smile too. We just like kind of talk in our language and walk away.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so what's interesting about your background is that like you were a certified trainer and you worked in gyms and fitness. And so back in 2013, you made the jump over to be a medical sales rep. Like, how did that happen and why?
Yeah, so it's actually, I was presented with an opportunity. There was a growing distributorship in Tucson, and they basically said, hey, we really need someone to run trays. We need you to set up trays for us, pick it up, drop it off at SBD, all that stuff. So I'm like, you know what, why not? I really want to get into it. My ex-husband was part of the company at the time. It still is, actually. So he presented the opportunity. He goes, so this will be a good career for you. Hopefully in the future, try it out and see what happens. So I was running trays. I was a personal trainer in the morning and a tray runner at night. And I would drive all over Arizona, to make sure their trays are set up for their surgery. And then about 2 months into it, my ex-boss was like, hey, there's actually an opportunity in Prescott. I need a rep in Prescott, basically, because, we're short-staffed. So are you willing to do it? And I said, okay, well, I've never really done anything like this before. I have an idea what anatomy is, but not spine anatomy. But I'm like, you know what? Why not? I'll check it out, try it out, and see what happens. So he goes like, yeah, just watch a couple YouTube videos and learn about spine surgery. And I'm sure the surgeon can, kind of guide you and teach you. And that's what I did. I basically, watch a couple YouTube, which is kind of sad, but it is what it is back then. Watch a couple YouTube videos about the surgery. Thankfully, the surgeon was really nice as far as, yes, I got kicked out a couple times. I'm not going to lie. But
I feel like that's part of that's par for the course. You're not a real rep unless you even like yelled at or kicked out of a case at least once. Like you're not trying hard enough, I guess.
Exactly. So yeah, that's how I learned. I mean, I learned unfortunately the hard way because I got thrown into it, but I learned pretty quickly that way. So yeah, so that's how I got started. I know it's not, it's kind of boring, but it is, that's how I got started.
And you did that from 2012 all the way up until like 2022, and then you joined like a much larger company, or rather, I believe like you are kind of sought after because within honestly like it hasn't been a full year because when you joined the Medical Sales Network Effects program, I think it was the summertime, and so we're in February now, and so within like half a year, like you went, I think you had like 70 or 80 followers on LinkedIn, something like that. You had nothing, like it was like there's nothing on your profile. Now you're like well over 3,500, and like every time like I'm on LinkedIn, your medical sales content is always trending. So like I'm looking at some of your featured posts, like one has like 1,000 likes, the other one's 400 likes, and a lot of it is focused on like self-development within the industry and like tips for other reps and everything. What happened or what changed like I guess a year ago that made you say like, yeah, I should start utilizing digital channels to essentially build my business and everything?
Right. It's amazing how life works, Omar. I mean, one day you have it all. I remember I was at the top of my career, everything was going my way, and then the next day COVID hits. And then after that, I started filing for divorce. And then after that, I got to start all over. And so I was trying to figure out ways of like, I got to do something different because during COVID, as you know, everything was shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so I was trained to cold sell. So that's all I knew all my life in the medical device industry. And I remember like trying to set up, sitting in front of my computer one day, trying to set up like another meeting. And they're like, no, we don't do any meetings. No, in-person meetings. I'm like, I got to figure a way out of this. Otherwise, I'm in big trouble. So I remember just sitting, like going through LinkedIn, and your video popped up. And there's one thing that you said in there that almost like a guilt trip on my end, because there was a point to where I'm like, kind of like making excuses why I'm not selling or producing. I'm just like, oh, because of COVID, I'll give it some time. Everything will be better. But it never got better. And so when I saw your video, you said something in terms of you're responsible. No one else is responsible for your own growth but yourself. So you can't blame your managers. You can't blame anybody else if you're not being successful, right? So I'm like, ouch, that kind of hurts, because that's basically what I was doing. I was just blaming COVID. I was blaming everybody that didn't invest it with me. But I'm like, but I can invest in myself. So I remember setting up the first, meeting with you. And I was just, you just got me. You understood what I was struggling with, and you had a solution for it. And I went from having 70 followers to now, I think, 4,000 followers on LinkedIn. And just the engagement I got. I remember when I bought your course, I finished it in a month because I was so excited. I'm like, I just need to know the secret, But people need to understand too. You can have all these ingredients, but you still have to follow through and do it.
You got to do something with it, yeah. All right, buddy, quick commercial break, and I wanted to share something that isn't going to resonate with most people, but if you are a med rep who's sick and tired of dealing with the way things are, where you're left without access, you can't sell to doctors, it's harder. Maybe you're a sales leader and you're frustrated, right, with the fact that your team is struggling to grow pipeline, or maybe you're a medtech startup CEO or founder who's trying to attract investors and actually get commercial traction so you can raise some money. In any case, I want you to listen closely. During the pandemic, I found myself in a very similar position. So I was working with a really cutting edge medtech startup, and we were selling a high-end piece of capital equipment. We had a partnership with the world's largest privately held medtech company, who was our distribution partner. That ended, right? And we were left with a tiny sales team of 4 people. Plus, as you can tell from the date, hospitals went on complete lockdown, and to make matters even worse, we were running out of money, literally, right? So it seemed like a death sentence for our company, but the CEO at the time was a really visionary one, and he had faith in me and allowed me to test this extremely revolutionary digital medical sales strategy. Okay, what was the outcome? In just 60 days, I managed to add a staggering 35 deals to pipeline, deals like Johns Hopkins, UCSF, HCA facilities, right? All while handling our marketing efforts, right? This led to a beautiful slide that showed a fully packed pipeline, helped us raise $15 million during that raise. And then 2 years later, because of a couple of the physicians who I was able to engage during that process, they led a study that gave us FDA breakthrough designation 2 years later. So this strategy not only packed pipeline at scale, but also helped attract investors, develop the slide that helped us raise money, and a few years later, give us that ability to leverage into an FDA breakthrough designation. So what was my secret weapon? Well, what I leveraged was network effects on social media, specifically places like LinkedIn, but also using email and video, right? And other platforms that physicians often use that captures their attention, persuades them, and then essentially get them into a virtual demo and propel them through a sales funnel. Now I created an exclusive program called the Medical Sales Network Effects Program to share this strategy with you and connect you with other innovators. The Medical Sales Network Effects Program is online content and training, plus a private network, plus ongoing live calls to keep you at the very edge of innovation and strategy, whether you're a medtech CEO and founder or even a sales rep, right? As an example, 2 weeks ago, we covered how to use ChatGPT in medical sales messaging through email. Maybe 1% of the world is using ChatGPT, and 0.01% of that is salespeople. And those salespeople are in my program. Imagine what unlocking those kinds of insights and strategies could do for you, your team, your company. And don't miss out on this opportunity to transform your career and take your company to a new height. So if you're interested to learn more, check the show notes below and watch the webinar that I recorded on this topic so that you can understand the full strategy and see if you qualify. Or go to my website, khateebandco.com. That's KHATEEB as in boy, ANDCO.com, and then learn more there. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah. So I started, for me, I mean, I looked at it as if if you're trying to lose weight, right? You can't go from eating bad food to eating healthy. It's baby steps. It takes time. So I started doing little things every day that's going to lead to that, progress or to that result that you're trying to get. And next thing I know, I mean, I started doing videos and posting a lot about, myself so people can get to know me better. And I literally will walk into the hospital and people will be talking about my videos or be like, oh, great video, great content. And I don't know any of these people. So that to me is pretty impressive, so where I don't have to work hard. And when I was doing before, I was really trying to work hard to, for people to get to know me versus now I walk into the facility and it's almost like they already know me. I don't have to try too hard, So yeah, so it's amazing what it did to me.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if I ever told you, but now that we're on a podcast, I could share it. So when I started the Medical Sales Network Effects program, my strong belief was just look, if I can do this part time, where during COVID I put 35 hospital deals in 60 days using LinkedIn, and of course there's email, there are video sales letters involved with that and everything. I was like, if anybody just follows these steps, there are people I think that are a lot better at sales than I am. They're a lot more personable, that they'll have much better results. But just like you said, it's like when people who sign up for a gym, they sign up. And now I know how gym owners feel. You have people who sign up for the gym. They're like, I'm ready to get in shape and everything. And then they don't do anything. So the summertime when you signed up, I had people who went through the program, but they were not taking as much action as they should. And I was actually pretty down. I'll be honest with you. I was very, very down. And because I was like, maybe this is not, I never doubted it, but there was a period where I felt so, I'll be honest, I was so down and depressed. I was just like, maybe this is just too much for people. Maybe I can do it, but other people aren't going to do it. And I remember the day that you and I had our Zoom call. First of all, those calls are usually 15, 20 minutes long. Ours was almost 2 hours. You cried on it. I cried a little bit on it because your story was so touching. And I remember I told my wife, who's also, she's an immigrant, from Turkey. I told her about you and she's like, oh, Omar, this lady's going to do big things. You'll see. And I was like, I hope so, because in the past I had gotten excited about certain reps who came to my program and they unfortunately just didn't do anything. And so I just lost that enthusiasm, and you just killed it. Right. And again, for people who, cause I was talking to a rep before and she's like, I don't understand the value of having an online presence because the people at the hospital, I don't know if they have time for this. And my thing is just that's what they're spending time posting, digesting content, engaging, and especially not just doctors, but nurses, PAs, etc. Everybody's employed by hospitals. So now they're spending time on LinkedIn for opportunities in industry and jobs and stuff. And part of the content is allowing people to learn more about you and see your journey, what a day in the life of your life is like. You delivering trays, you working with doctors, but then also you started putting out educational material. You started just with some basic posts on biologics, right? Surgeons started engaging, and then you started doing just simple videos, nothing crazy, of you just holding a camera and explaining what a biologic was, right? And I remember you told me I was really sad. I think it was a doctor from Ohio or Michigan that directly messaged you on LinkedIn saying, hey, I really would love to learn about your business and everything. Is that correct? Can you walk us through that? What happened there?
For sure. So out of nowhere, I'm just like doing my regular thing. And I remember I would walk into hospitals, people like, hey, I love your content, great video. And this is coming from other reps. So I'm not just getting engagement by surgeons, but also other reps are watching my videos. And then one day I just got this random email. I remember I was in surgery and all of a sudden this surgeon from Ohio emailed me. He's a neurosurgeon. And he goes, hey, Gyda, like I've been watching your content and I've been following you on LinkedIn. I really want to get to know more about your business. So yeah, so I scheduled right away. I was able to schedule like a call with him, and he was a great call.
That's amazing. And what about like when you went to conferences? I remember you mentioned, like, aside from surgeons reaching out directly on LinkedIn, like when you went to conferences, it was a lot easier for you to like book meetings, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I literally would walk into a conference and people will already know my name. And they will call me like the biologics lady. Oh, you're the biologics lady on LinkedIn, which is pretty funny. And I loved it because I'm actually making an impact, like people are actually seeing. And it's not like what you said, it's not anything crazy. It's just a consistency of me putting it out there. Right.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I saw the value and the advantage. And I think that, I do not want to use the female rep as an excuse, but it takes me a lot longer to actually sell a surgeon because there's a lot of really proving your knowledge, right? So I'm like, if I can have a platform that I can show them that I am knowledgeable before I even walk into an office or the OR, then
Yeah.
like I'm not going
And
to waste more time.
no, and you're right. And like, look, some people are going to get really upset with what I'm about to say, but I think it's true is that, I think there was a period of time, and this is not like a secret, like period of time in the 80s and 90s and even well into the 2000s where in the medical industry, and I'm including pharma in there, where for pharma, they don't cover cases and everything. So a lot of it was just, hey, let's hire really attractive people, right? To set the lunches and everything, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a big fan. Like if you're in sales, like that helps. Like there's a reason, like for me, even as a man, like when I take sales calls, I get dressed up at home because when I do a sales call, whether it's with a doctor or a rep, like I need to look presentable. I need to look attractive. I need to, because it makes it easy to do business with you. Unfortunately though, especially at the, from the pharma side, like they really took that to, a level that may not be good, which is hiring, in my opinion, not all of them, but a good amount of people who are not really that qualified to be pharmaceutical representatives, and they got hired just because they were like good looking faces. And I think that stigma carried over into med device. And so again, I'm not a woman, but at least from my perspective, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because of that stigma, if you're a female medical device rep, right, and you're even borderline attractive, in shape, you're immediately put in this category of like, oh, just another pretty face. And so you have to kind of work a little bit harder just to prove that you're worth listening to. Am I wrong in saying that?
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. I remember walking into a case one time, and this was during the time that I was really into fitness. I was still doing, the fitness modeling side of things. I remember I walk into a room and the surgeon was holding my magazine. And they're like, oh, let's pull up her because I had a fitness spread at one point. Let's put up her spread up on the big screen. So my spread was on there wearing like sports bra and like, shorts. And while we're about to do spine surgeries, I'm like, can we just focus on, the patient, what we're trying to do? So of course, there's always going to be that stigma, right? But I have to stay true to myself. And, fitness has always been a passion of mine. So there's going to be Instagram posts about fitness, but I have to stay true to that. That's who I am. But yes, but then there's another side of me that, that wants to prove that I really am good clinically also, that I can be a big help in the OR for them. So in order to avoid that kind of stigma, again, LinkedIn was my path, my way. I'm not wasting my time trying to prove myself to them in the OR. Now they get to see who I really am in this platform before I even meet them face to face. So it takes away that kind of, side of things.
No, absolutely. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with, having certain hobbies. And again, like fitness, modeling, those kind of things is fine. And I think you and we talked about that, where if that's what you lead with majority of your content, then that's what people think of. And it's kind of a reversal. And now like a big majority of your content, I'd say like 70-80% of it is like professional, it's medical sales and everything. You still have like beautiful photos and content, not only from your fitness, but also, I mean, you're kind of like world's most interesting woman. Like you do ballroom dancing, your fitness, like you're in, you do like high tech medical device sales, right? So you kind of like world's most interesting woman, but at least like your main brand is like businesswoman first and then everything else second, right? Which I think that some people, they have to make that decision. Like for me, even, again, it's different as a guy, but there's a side of me where I like putting out fun content and everything, but I realize that if the majority of my content is me having fun and like, making jokes and being silly, like I'm not going to be taken seriously, And so I had to make a shift in my own content a few years ago where I was like, okay, like nothing wrong with if I do like these book videos that I'm like kind of doing a parody on something every now and then is fine. But if that's every week and that's majority of my content, that's my brand, and it's going to take me more time to get people to take me seriously,
I totally agree. I mean, the moment I did that shift myself, ever since I started taking your course, I mean, I landed my dream job, obviously that's for the reason we were just talking about it. And I wasn't even looking for a job. I was happy with where I'm at.
Yeah. I got surprised when I heard about it.
Yeah, I wasn't looking. I was doing my thing. Everything was going well. But I've always had my eye on this company because it's one of the biggest med device company in the world. And I remember I got an email from the hiring manager that's been following me on LinkedIn saying that, hey, you should apply for this job. I think you'll be a great fit.
So you didn't technically did you even have to submit a resume?
I did. So
okay, yeah, because it's a big company. You have to follow. But it sounds like most of the persuasion was already done.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's the key, whether you're selling yourself into a job or selling yourself into the C-suite or selling yourself into the OR, which is how do you use digital to persistently and consistently condition and persuade that person. So when you do have a meeting, most of the things that you have to do are already done. Like the persuasion is already done. And I think that's the key, even with pipeline. Like most of the time when reps are trying to get a meeting, first they're trying to like get the person to be familiar with them, trust them, all these things, then convince them to get on a meeting. And then after that meeting, have another one. Versus I think like in your case, your pipeline velocity is a lot faster because those steps are all technically done at scale while you sleep digitally. So then you just go right into product demo and then utilization. Would you agree with that?
Totally. It's totally true. And it's funny, they asked me, one of my interview questions actually is, what have you done in your career to where you thought outside of the box? And I told them I paid for a digital marketing course out of my own pocket. And during that time, money was pretty tight because I was going.
Money was tight for you. I remember that.
Right.
Yeah. And you threw down.
I did. I'm like, I got to do it. It's worth it. It's going to be worth
it. And it's funny, like, I had a feeling back then, I was like, because you're in a tight spot and you paid all of it up front. Back then I didn't have payment options, nothing. You paid all front. I was like, either this is going to blow up in my face and it's not going to work for her, or she's going to be so hungry and motivated to like make this work that she's going to just blaze through. And you did, and I think the other thing is that it never stops. Like even me, like, look, I'm a business owner. I have so many things to be dealing with. Do I want to be making like TikTok or Instagram reels or creating content, everything? No, like it gets tiring, but I got to do it because it's just like consistency over time. And I think it's the same thing with you, with your biologist content, with your spine content, which is, you're connected with a huge group of surgeons. And that week when you decide to post content may not be the week that the surgeon is interested in making a change, but there'll be a time where they have a problem or they're not happy with their current company. And they're like, I should talk to Gyda Oliveros because I know she carries the same product or a better product. Let me just try that.
It's funny you say that, Omar. That actually just happened. And
how are we like 30 minutes into this interview and you didn't even mention, what happened? I want to hear this.
Yeah, so obviously I'm no longer in the spine industry. I'm a different field now. But about a week ago, I got approached, like a surgeon that I was trying to get a meeting with way back when, reached out to me on LinkedIn saying, hey, Gyda, do you carry this specific product? And I said, no, I'm no longer in the industry, but I can find someone who does for you. He's like, no, it's okay. But I just want to let you know, I want to recommend you to a colleague of mine that's looking for a distributorship. So I'm like, oh, I'm no longer in the industry, but I can recommend somebody else, obviously. So it's just amazing because it never ends, right? And
Yeah. And look, even though that's, you know, that's not, you're selling to a different call point right now. In terms of network, how much power and leverage do you have now when you're able to make, pass that business off to somebody else and you strengthen your network? So I feel like as you utilize LinkedIn and these digital channels to sell, like you grow your network, you make it better. And again, who knows, like a few years from now, if you decide to start your own business, if you decide to pursue something in the fitness area, like there's just so many different avenues you can take, and it gives you a lot more power as a business person. Because, I think what happens a lot of times is people get stuck doing an old, outdated sales strategy, and they're in one company, and then a layoff happens or something, and they have to start everything from zero. And that's when I see people making bad mistakes, like joining the wrong company for the wrong position, or and you become like a disgruntled person, you know?
Totally. And, it's funny because like when I finally asked my manager now why he was interested in me, why he even like hired me. And he says, because of your digital marketing. He goes like, he goes like the company, because it's a big company, they're very slow with adapting to the new way of selling, right? So they're still
Yeah.
doing the old school way of selling, which is cold selling. But he goes like, I was very interested with what you have to bring to the table. And every time he started talking about me to his team is even trying to figure out how I did what I did, basically. So it's pretty interesting how that happened, how everything kind of worked out. And again, this is something that I wasn't even seeking. I wasn't looking for a new job. I was happy with where I'm at. And they found me. And it's pretty impressive.
That's amazing. And I think that's the, like, one of the other benefits. Again, you're doing pretty well in your previous role. So the fact that you got sought after, I think like having those options are important, because again, people even who are happy with what they have, I always tell them, like, isn't it better though to know that there are other opportunities, you can evaluate them at any time, and you can see, like, A, what are you worth to the market? B, what's going on in the market? What's changed, right? I think that's the most important thing, is having those options. Because I told, there's a guy who's at a big biotech company who was going to join the course, and then I literally do not know what happened, but all of a sudden, like, he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. And I told him something that that I think is important for a lot of salespeople to understand when it comes to adopting a new strategy. Let's say hiring a professional coach, going to the program, like whatever it is. You do it out of one or two reasons: inspiration or desperation. So like when you joined my program, like it was purely out of inspiration, because you didn't have to do it. The other side is that people joining the program, or let's say, forget my program, getting some help, trying something new, out of desperation. And when you do things out of desperation, it's all from a scarcity mindset. You're cutting corners and everything, and then things don't work. And the moment things don't work, you immediately abandon it. You know what I mean? And it's just really bad and painful to see.
Right. I mean, you have to have the growth mindset too. I mean, when I was before, I saw your video. I was in that. It's almost like a combination of inspiration and desperation for me when I joined into your course, because I was at the point in my life to where everything was just shifting and money was tight. But I knew that I had to do something, because I wasn't gonna wait and sit there when all the hospitals are closed down. I feel like now I have more time to figure out a strategy that would help me when things started, going back to normal. And yeah, so that's basically was my strategy. I'm like, if it doesn't work, at least I tried,
Yeah.
but I know in the back of my head that I wasn't gonna invest on something that's not gonna work. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So just to shift real quick, like, for you, you have a great professional brand, but you mentor a lot of people, and I think that a lot of like younger reps and people trying to get in industry like really love your content and look to it. That's probably why like you've done so well on Instagram, and you have a TikTok too, which I'll plug in the show notes. What's your advice to, let's say, like newer reps? Like, I can kind of go in a lot of directions with that, but like, what are some pieces of advice that you wish somebody told you?
Right. I mean, again, going back to you're responsible for your own growth. You cannot rely on people to hold your hand for the rest of your life. I mean, there's only so much that your managers can do to help you, but you yourself have to figure out ways to grow and to adapt to the new ways of selling. Right. I always hear reps complain. There's always like all these reasons why they didn't get what they get. Right. Then look for a different reason or look for a different way to get it. And also like another thing I've learned is like people give up so quickly. I mean,
Why do you think that is, by the way? Because like you've done medical sales and you've done fitness, which is like fitness and sales. Like those are two like really tough things to do. Why do you think people give up so easily?
Ego. It's ego. It's basically, your ego got hurt and, you'd rather make excuses why you didn't get what you're supposed to get versus figuring out different ways. And for me, I've gotten, I've had doors shut in front of my face, but that never stopped me from achieving what I wanted to achieve, because I'm from the Philippines. I moved here. I didn't speak any English, learn English. And then I got into spine industry, learned the language, and now I'm in the cardiovascular industry, still learning a new language. So it's you just can't quit right away because there's always ways around it. You just have to find it.
Yeah, and I'll say like that's the other thing that I got really excited about was that it says a lot. So like in this industry, what often happens, especially on the sales side, is that people stay within the same specialty for like decades. And you don't see people moving into other specialties because there's this whole barrier of hiring where like I know execs who have insane experience, but they didn't get a job because the company's like, oh, we want somebody who has experience in this like one little niche. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. But the fact that you move from spine to cardiovascular, it's not like spine to neuro, spine to cardiovascular, two wildly different things. And do you feel like one of the main reasons they didn't hire for your experience, obviously, because you have no cardiovascular experience? Do you feel like it's mainly because you're taking a radically different approach to selling and one that is more welcomed by physicians? Like, do you think that's what, like, why would they take a risk like that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what made my new manager interested is because of the different approach I'm taking into selling. And he's always been the type of person who is always looking for new ways of getting the business, right? And he saw how different my approach is from what he's used to seeing. And I think that really inspired him and our team now, because even now I'm trying to, help my team out into utilizing what I've learned from you in your course and seeing if we can grow this even more, and yeah, so definitely, absolutely. I agree with you 100% for sure.
That's awesome. I want to shift a little bit, and again, like get your take on certain things. One known as a like medical device sales rep, but obviously we've talked about this difference between like whether people like it or not. Like it is different for females in the industry than men, right? It is what it is, right? Like what are some of the challenges that you faced like earlier on in your career? And if you can go back in time and talk to yourself, like what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge for me is getting through the door. I mean, when you go into an office, it's a female front desk person. So now they're thinking that, what are you doing here? Do you have any bad intentions because of what was created in the past? And it was unfortunate, but not everybody does it, So yeah, so that's the biggest hurdle that I'm getting. Like I can't even get a meeting because they're already judging me as I walk through the door. And then once I get the business, I walk to a new hospital, they're judging me because I'm a new female rep, right? Like, how did you get this account? Did you do something to get this account? So now they're testing you to see if you actually know what you're doing. So, I mean, the biggest advice I can give to, future female reps, again, like, I don't always like to use the female male excuse because I always look at it as like every gender, you're going to have pros and cons, right? They would say as a female, oh, it's easier for you the doctor will meet with you quicker than they would meet with me. But then I can't really talk about sports because I know nothing about sports.
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of guys, I hate to say, and again, like I'm not particularly PC about these things. But again, that's something that the guys don't like. And again, like I have to tell guys, I'm like, yeah, like on one side, will a doctor meet with a female because, you know, they're like more charming and attractive than you? Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, it's a lot easier for a doctor for you to like strike up conversation or even small talk or something, because like you can talk about sports, you can talk about a lot of different things. And a lot of people don't want to admit that, but like that, you know, that's part of it, right? So like there's like advantages and disadvantages. And I think like this is my personal perspective, which is like you don't do yourself any favors by looking at all the reasons why you're not going to get business. But when you look at it and say, okay, if I had to bet, these are some obstacles I could potentially deal with or have. How do I overcome them? So for you, you know, you mentioned having to make sure to prove that you know your stuff and you're not just like another pretty face. And so you took to proving that without talking to the doctor to begin with, which is like, how do I have a professional presence online where even if you're I mean, look, some of your biologic stuff, like every doctor will know that, right? But that's spine surgeons. There's a lot of other physicians who don't know anything about biologics. So just by taking things that you already know and educating the market, like that develops thought leadership. And one thing about the brain, the way it works is that it doesn't know how to separate or differentiate these things. It doesn't know how to say like, oh, she's not covering, you know, like she's covering like this part of biologics and not that part. All it knows is like this person is constantly popping up on the feed. People are engaging, like thought leader, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
they call me the biologics lady. So
The biologics lady. I love that. I think you should lean into that, you know? Yeah, no, seriously. So what are some other things that like outside of, let's say, utilizing LinkedIn and Instagram, like tactically on digital, whether it's like email or text or something, like reps, they love tactics. So like what are some like interesting tactics that you can kind of give away or share with reps?
I'm actually learning how to, well, first of all, you got to know how to network, right? I mean, I like to put myself in situations to where I'm going to meet people. You know, I think the biggest thing I've done for my, past career was I snuck into this, it's like a, kind of like a dinner for surgeons, attorneys, and insurance people. No reps are allowed, but it's for like a pain management kind of meeting. And I basically went hiking with the guy that organized it. I'm like, hey, I know you don't like reps, but I really would like to network. I'm not going to bother any of your surgeons. I just want to, kind of be invited into the event. So he goes like, yeah, go hiking with me. We'll talk. I want to get to know you as a person, and then I'll invite you. So he got to know me, and he knew I had good intentions. I wasn't gonna bother anybody, and he knows that I was gonna respect his party and that time that he's given me, and I did, and I still have a really good relationship with him. So with that one meeting, I was able to meet 3 spine surgeons that I was basically, before I left my last career, I was starting to like build momentum with them. And yeah, so it's you putting yourself in situations to where, don't be afraid again to put yourself in situations to where you're gonna meet someone that knows someone who knows someone,
That's
so
interesting because it's kind of like the similar approach to like what you're doing on LinkedIn, which is part of, I mean, take medicine out of it. Part of just doing business in general is developing some kind of connection and trust and familiarity so that somebody's willing to take a meeting with you. Because like, look, even me as a business owner, I get called on by like PR people, software people, et cetera, so on and so forth. The meetings I actually take, usually it's because like the person caught my attention, like they engaged in my content or they sent something very relevant to my business. And so I took the meeting because at the very least I was like, I kind of like that this person sent me something like this. And at the very least, like it's going to be kind of entertaining and educational. And so it's a good use of my time. And I think that your advice here is like, if you're trying, if step one is like, get the surgeon to know who you are and know that you exist, only focusing on that happening at the hospital, between cases, at the cafeteria when they're busy is kind of a miss, versus like there's all these other avenues where you can develop like that professional relationship, like networking events is one thing. The other one is like, I always tell reps, I'm like, look, every doctor has problems with marketing. Go learn a little bit about marketing from one of these agencies and like, maybe sell, I don't know, like get an affiliate or affiliate pay or something, like if any doctor converts. But try and learn some, like, okay, let me back up. This is a better example. People who are going through my program, I tell people all the time, like, look, you're learning how to develop thought leadership on LinkedIn. Go to your surgeon who you're trying to get a meeting with and help and be like, hey, love to have a meeting. By the way, like, here, I want to show you some specific things you can do to tune up your LinkedIn profile so you can be seen more like a thought leader, aside from just posting your cases, but have an opportunity to attract like interesting startups or industry, engagements or something, right? So now like without your company changing, your product changing, you've kind of created more value just on your own,
I know. I would never forget the advice you gave me to Omar. You're like, because I remember I was, scared about like switching to a different industry. And I know it's with a bigger company, so there's gonna be more rules. And I remember you telling me just focus on building your brand. No matter what company you're with, it's still your brand. You're still Gyda. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, it totally makes sense, because it's so easy to get wrapped around like, oh, HR, oh, this. But at the end of the day, just focus on building your brand, and things will go, the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, and at least, I mean, again, like where you're at now, the CEO has really fantastic like leadership brand. I've noticed that they've done a good job, like other employees having like very good professional brands and everything. And I think the smart companies will realize like, hey, if we have an employee who has a positive professional brand, not only does that help with like growing the business, but it helps with other things like recruiting, for example. I guarantee you, like for your team, if you have to recruit new people, like it's going to be pretty easy for you to not only recruit somebody, but like get somebody to quit, somebody who's really highly sought after to quit their job and come over to your team just because they're like, yeah, I want to work for Gyda, or be part of the team that she's on. So I think that so many good things happen. The one thing that I'm trying to do is help larger companies, not just larger, our entire industry, to understand like, this is helpful to the company in raising money, driving business, recruiting. But B, this is the way customers are buying and engaging. I mean, look, you're on the cardiovascular space, and actually I can bring it up here because I'm going to be publishing these reports soon on physician activity on LinkedIn. So orthopedics is my favorite example because they post clinical cases all the time. But I did a study on physician usage on LinkedIn. So check this out. Cardiologists, okay, in the United States, there's 29,000 of them on LinkedIn. 1,500 of them posted something in the last 30 days. That means they created their own original content and posted. So that's 5%. And some people say like, oh, that's only 5%. That doesn't count the number of people who log into LinkedIn and passively, they don't comment or like anything, but they read things, or they like and comment on things, or they reshare things. Interventional cardiologists, that was another one I did. Interventional cardiologists, there's 6,500 in the United States with LinkedIn profile. 1,500, so close to 10% of them post stuff in the last 30 years. And I was looking at the posts. They're posting things on cases, et cetera, because more physicians, they don't want to wait for the annual meeting to engage with their peers. And even if you wait to the annual meeting, maybe you don't talk on podium. A lot of doctors, they're not the chair of cardiology at Mayo, right? So they want to have their own thought leadership. So they're going to LinkedIn to do that because it's conducive for it,
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And a lot of people need to understand too, that just because you're good clinically doesn't mean you're a good salesperson.
Oh, that's getting clipped. Dive into that a little bit more. So you're saying that just because you're good clinically doesn't mean that you're good at selling. Explain that.
It's totally different. Yes, you can talk the language. I mean, I've learned this the hard way because initially I was so focused on like, I just want to learn everything. I just want to learn anatomy. I just want to know this. But then like the time that I engaged with a surgeon, the surgeon would just walk away because I didn't know how to sell, and somebody told me, Gyda, he goes, stop investing your time. Yes, you should invest your time in educating yourself, but still learn how to sell. because there's a huge difference. Like, there's a lot of people that just can't build relationship or doesn't know how to follow through, which is part of selling, doesn't know where to go to start the conversation, doesn't know how to, use platforms like LinkedIn to build relationships or to get out there. It's a total different thing. I mean, what is your take on that, Omar?
No, I 100% agree. So like, I always believe that like, when I was in the robotics world, like we had this saying that clinical sells capital, right? Which part of it is true because if you drive clinical utilization, that helps. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. There's a complete difference. There's a difference between clinical and selling. Clinical means that they're willing to sit down and listen to what you have to say, right? And potentially do it. But in order to get them to sit down, it's on very rare occasions that you're going to know so much clinically that they're going to say, man, I should listen to this rep because they'll know something, right? And even in that case, like, it's not going to happen by accident, right? Like, I think there's a lot of times where a surgeon or a physician wants, like, they genuinely are like, yeah, this rep, their technology or their clinical knowledge is so good. I'd love to meet with them and everything. The rep still has to figure out a way to persuasively get them to commit to that meeting, right? Because like the emotional side of it, which is how every decision is made, could be done where the physician's like, yeah, I'll meet with them. But if the rep doesn't know how to sell that meeting, the logical objective side of that physician's brain is gonna be like, yeah, but you're busy, or it's this reason, that reason. And if you don't know how to overcome that and channel that momentum, right, to turn into a meeting, like, it's just not gonna happen, And again, like, even like, look, if we look at LinkedIn, a lot of reps, and I see them doing this, and it's just really painful to watch, but then I'm okay with it because it makes the people in my program stand out even more. It's not just, hey, I'm just going to go post things and comment on stuff, right? It's just like when you go to a hospital, right? Like if you talk to a medical salesperson 10 years ago, it's like, how do I sell? It's like, go to the hospital and sit in the cafeteria, or go to the scheduling board and wait and then talk to the surgeon. It's not that simple. Like, there's things about like your body language, the things you start with, like there's so many little nuanced things. It's the exact same thing online. There's no difference between the physical and digital world. So there's like so much nuance to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so,
totally.
yeah. So again, like with your content, it's not all just clinical stuff. It's not all just like day in the life of a rep. Like, there is a strategy behind how you create this content when you start, putting it out there. And then at what point do you pull the lever and say, okay, now I'm going to go outbound and convert this person into a meeting and then a deal?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there is a strategy, right? It's called like sales strategy for a reason. And there are steps, and it is a process. I mean, the worst thing you can do is, like, I call it like the sales vomit, where you word vomit all this information to a surgeon, and they're not even listening. They probably listen to the first part of it and the end of it,
Oh my
but
God.
then they close. Like,
It's so true. Why do you think that is? Why do you think so many reps just, they kill themselves to get that first meeting, to get the meeting, and they just like show up and throw up features
right.
and benefits and a demo? Why do you think that is?
I did that in the beginning, so I know exactly, why those reps are doing. I think you just get all excited thinking that that's what they want to hear. But unfortunately, they don't. When you get a meeting, you shouldn't even be talking that much. You should be listening and trying to figure out, what their needs are, how you can help them. The worst thing you can do is just like, oh, here are all my products, and then at the end, you're like, what do you think? And they're like, I don't even remember what you said,
Yeah. I feel like it's very selfish selling, because essentially, like, you're making that person do all the mental gymnastics of figuring out how to buy your stuff. Like, just to kind of like dig into, because I really enjoy it. So I'm gonna share how, like, some of the, like, how I sell. Like, I'll tell you how I sold you. Like, when we first talked, I didn't talk about my program. I spent the first 15 minutes asking you questions, and I told you, I said, hey, before I jump into the program, I just want to ask you some questions, because then I need to understand, like, what are you dealing with today? What are your pains and obstacles? So I kind of I didn't just start asking random questions where you would think, where's this going? I told you, like, hey, I'm going to ask you these questions, and that's going to help me figure out like what to focus on. I asked you questions and you talked about your pains, the obstacles, etc. And then when we start talking about the program, I use the language that you used to explain what the benefits are and what you're going to get out of it. So you don't have to do any thinking, right? It's all about alignment. And I think, you know, if the salespeople back in the 90s and 2000s had social media, they would have made a killing, even more so, because you can go online between a physician's faculty page, their LinkedIn, their Instagram, Twitter. These people have an online presence, right? You have to look hard though. A lot of reps, they're like, oh, my surgeon's not online. Yeah, they are. You're not looking hard enough. Even looking at old publications stuff, because essentially you're finding the language that they have used to either describe a problem, describe themselves, etc. And so when you're walking in the meeting, like, you know what to focus on. You know, like I learned a lot, Gyda, from the entrepreneurs. I'm in a mastermind. So these entrepreneurs, they deal with like construction, business automation. Like I think I'm the only one who's in medtech and biotech. And one of the things they always say is, like, the moment the prospect talks about what's important to them, do not talk about other things in your product. Talk about the things that they care about. Like, that's it, you know?
Exactly. And that exactly separates a clinical person from a salesperson, right? Because clinical person, you want to just keep talking about, like, you know, studies and your product and how great it is. But a salesperson knows how to listen and know when to talk and when to not talk. So yeah, that's a really good point.
What are some other things you feel that salespeople make the mistake of doing?
Well, other than like talking too much and not listening.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a big mistake. Not following through and not knowing when to close.
Let's talk about that, because that's a big topic. Especially, we did deal rip. So for the people who are listening, deal rip live is where we bring on anonymous deals. We take the company, product, everything out, and we do a deal rip with like sales leaders. So if you're interested, you can go submit your deal anonymously at dealrip.com. But a big part of it, Joseph Highland Othman, who's a VP over at Cerebral, talked about, is like the importance of the follow-up process. Why is that so important, and where do reps like kind of fall short?
Yeah, I think a lot of times the moment you get that big meeting, you get all excited. I'm like, oh, I got that guy. I got him. Like, you know, I don't need. I mean, for me in the beginning, when I first started, I would set up all these meetings, and then the moment I get the meeting and do the meeting, I'm like, it went really well. Well, how do you think? What is step 2? Like, they're not going to reach back out to you. I'm sure they're doing like 20 other meetings with all these different companies too. So it's your job to follow up consistently without being annoying, obviously, to make sure that, you know, they keep thinking about you. So you want to keep like, hey, I'm still here. Is there anything I can do? Do you need any help? And then that's something that also that you have to work with your manager, like how there's different like ways of following up. I mean, I have my own way of following up, like the process that makes sense with the company, right? Especially like if you have a big team, it's a little different because you don't want to. I mean, for me, we have like a process to where, hey, you do this, you reach out to the surgeon, tell me what you guys talked about. So when I reach out to him, I'm not repeating myself. You know,
right,
I'm not
right.
We keep moving forwards and stuff. And like learning when to close and ask for the business. That was the hardest part for me when I first started. Because I didn't know how to do it, how to say it without seeming too needy or seeming too desperate, right? So you've done all this work from day one. And then the last thing you want to do is like not actually, hey, when can we get a case? When can we do this? You know, how are we going to do this? You know, and also like doing your homework in the back end. So you shouldn't expect a surgeon to do everything for you. You have to make it as easy as possible for them, right? What I meant by that is like make sure your products are approved already. Make sure there's already a contract ready for them. So it's just the moment they said, okay, I'm going to use you, it's easy. You know, you're not like, okay, well, let me make sure we're approved or let me make sure I even have the inventory to do so. You know, so make sure all of those are set up. And that's part of like following up or following through after, you know, the meeting. So when they give you the business, it's easy. You're not going backwards again and kind of starting over.
That's so true. And I think like asking for the business, I mean, as cliches is like, it's true. A lot of people just, they it's either they don't do it or they don't do it the right way. And the other side of it is, and I think one of the managers I worked with a long time ago, Robbie Reeves, who was at Mazor, made this point, which is like, your job when you're dealing with a surgeon is to pretty much make it so that there's no way they can say no, right? And so I think the other side of that is like, make it so easy and like lower that barrier so that instead of having them to climb over it, it's like they just walk over it, and adopt your product. So make it just very easy to say yes, which I think a lot of it has to do with like the rep, like look, on the side of capital equipment, you can get a really excited clinical champion, and then you think that they're going to go and like push it through the hospital, do this or that. And a lot of times the rep needs to talk and go and figure that out. It's like, hey, doctor, you should talk to this person, that person. Or if they've done it before, you get it from them and say, doctor, who are the people we have to influence? Let me go work on them. So that way it's just like, hey, doc, figured all this out. Here's the email I drafted. Feel free to change it, but you can just copy paste this and send it to these people and it's done. Do you feel like that's a place that a lot of reps mess up? That they just don't do the work?
Absolutely. I mean, the moment they find a guy that's going to push their product, like what you said, the clinical champion, they think he's going to do all the work. I remember being actually one of my first sale, I lost it because the surgeon was like, Gyda, they literally, the hospital sat me down for 3 hours in a conference room trying to justify, well, I should use your product. And I'm like, you shouldn't have been doing that. I should have done that for him, So if I would have just done that for him, I would have gotten that count. Does that make sense? So even if you have a champion that's going to want to use your product or try to push it, you still want to make it as easy as possible for that person. So, to make sure that everything goes smooth for you, because they don't want to do the work. They're already doing a lot of work. They're already, the last thing they want is to try to justify your product when they could be worrying about their patients.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to make sure I'm mindful of your time, but like I got a few more questions I want to hit on. You good on time?
Yeah, good.
Perfect. So, what are selling today? Like, again, I always tell people medical sales, this is one of the most difficult sales jobs out there because you're responsible for the whole process. In SaaS, like they have like an SDR, BDR to do prospecting and AE to do this, but in med sales, like you really own everything. And you're dealing with a highly sophisticated and skeptical buyer. Outside of that, what are some other tips you have for reps in terms of being successful selling outside of just dealing with the physician? What are some areas that you feel like reps don't pay close enough attention to or study enough?
I think like making sure that you are, again, focused on your growth, your own personal growth or your own career growth. I think reps get so comfortable with, let's say they land a big deal. They get really comfortable that they think they're going to be set for life. I mean, it happened to me. Two of my biggest accounts, two of the surgeons retired. So I'm like, oh no, those are my biggest accounts, but I didn't have a backup at that time because I really didn't understand it. So always having that almost like, I don't like to call it paranoid, but it is kind of paranoid like mindset of like, things can shift in a heartbeat. So you always have to have a plan, or concept plan. And like what you said in your course, like, the only thing you can control is daily activities. So even if you're not, right, see, I actually went through your course twice, Omar.
You're making me so happy that you just said that. It's so true though. Yeah. It's so true. The only thing, even for me as a business, the only thing I have control of is what are my activities on a daily basis, the process. That's all I control.
Yeah. Correct. And it works. Like, you can't relax. You can't just say, I'm set, I landed a big account. You always have to be thinking about, what if I lose this? What am I going to do? But there's no reason to sit there and panic. Also, you have to do something every day that's going to lead you to that success. It could take 2-3 years. It doesn't matter. But the point is you're doing something every day. So I think the biggest things that most reps do that I've seen, because I've done it myself, I'm guilty of it, is the moment you land a big deal, you just stop trying to acquire a new deal,
Yeah. And I think, oops, excuse me. I think that's a really important thing to know as well, because my biggest thing is like pipeline growth. You can be great at closing, but if you're not good at packing pipeline, like you will lose to your competition. And there's some deals that there's deals you nurture, deals you farm. So the nurturing deals, they're going to close within the regular sales timeline of, let's say it's average takes you 4 or 5 months to close a deal. Those are ones that nurture. Other ones, like let's say it's a huge health system, they're not going to close in 4 months. So you got to farm those deals. And you have to focus on farming them and taking care of them for like months on end. But I think only at that time where, if let's say you lose a big account, or let's say a big account, like they've hit their ceiling of growth, then you can go and pull the lever of like, oh, here's these other deals in my pipeline I've been like just farming for months and months. Now's the time for me to put some more pressure and actually get them to convert, right? Because a lot of times, like, we hear about these like glory stories in the industry, like so-and-so closed this huge ACA facility or whatever. That always feels like it was done in like 30 days. But in reality, there's all of these little things happening months ahead of time, little by little. And it's just like compound interest. And then at the right time, you pull that lever and it's like, all right, now we're going to like floor it for 30 days and get this deal through. And I think a lot of reps, again, like to quote another guy, again, a lot of these great stories I learned is from my time at Missouri Robotics, which, they had a huge exit, $1.6 billion. But Sean Stewart always told me when I was a rep and he was a manager, he was like, you have to be thinking 3 to 4 quarters ahead all the time,
Yeah, it's kind of like a savings account, right? You have to have a year worth of savings just in case things like doesn't work out, right? So same thing with your accounts, your business. Like you have to be thinking ahead. You have to be always paranoid. And also like that is good, but you can't be lazy with the current accounts that you have also, because that's how you lose the business. Because, it's kind of like, how when you've been seeing, for example, the same hair person, all of a sudden they start treating you like they're your friend, and then next thing you know, they're canceling on you, or they're running late all the time. You can't do that with a surgeon. You have to always basically treat that business as if it was the first day. You have to. You can't relax.
Oh, I love that. And that saying you just said, you have to treat the business like it's the first day all the time is so good. And actually, I have a book recommendation as always. Let's see. I'm usually good at picking it out. Yes. Okay. See, this is like my favorite thing is like when I'm able to think of a book and I know exactly where it is in my library. So like this concept of paranoia, I mean, you don't want paranoia to cripple you, but Andy Grove, who is the president and chairman of Intel, when Intel made their big changes in the 70s and 80s and became $1 billion company, he has a book called Only the Paranoid Survive. It's a really good book, especially like when I was part of the executive team at a software company a couple of years back. Our one of the investors required it that we all read this book, and essentially it goes back to exactly what you just said, which is when you're paranoid, like you're thinking about every single way that you can lose the business, and so you're setting up like plans not only to just in case if things change, but more importantly, like making sure you're on top of it. Like I think the only way to approach the idea that you have to treat it like day one all the time is through paranoia. Otherwise, you get comfortable. The opposite of paranoia is you're comfortable,
Totally. I mean, that's exactly how I got like a couple of my biggest accounts, because the other rep just got lazy and stopped, doing what he was doing day one. And I just snuck in there and got it. And, it's so easy. There's so many reps out there, that are just waiting to take your business. So you have to be almost like kind of like a mama bear, trying to take care of your business while you're trying to grow it as well.
No, well, it's so true. And again, like, I think it's going to get more competitive now because, in the past, like you can have a customer that was like not in a good mood, but if your competitor is not around that day, nothing's going to happen. But now, like, for example, if a Gyda Loveras is your competitor and every day your customer is seeing that content, maybe every now and then they're getting a message from saying, hey, just thought about you. Like, here's a really interesting clinical article. Here's something for your marketing team, whatever. It just takes one day for them to be like, damn it, like I'm not happy with the level of service I'm getting. let me go to Gyda Laveris, actually. Let me try her out for one. And that's all it takes, because again, like, if you think about like the psychology of behavior change, right? If something is painful enough or upsetting enough where that emotion is stronger than the pain of changing, people will try something new. And when they try something new, their benchmark is comparing, is this new thing better than the old thing? And if the new thing, in this case, going with a new rep, that rep shows up like on point, everything is flawless, everything is great, all these good feelings, that customer in their mind is now comparing, I just had this huge hit of dopamine and good feelings and everything from this new thing. And then when they think about going back to the old thing, if the old thing is negative enough, that's enough to change behavior. And at that point, that's how business change, you know?
Absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is, you get this bad rap because then they talk to their friends about it. Then now you have this bad reputation all over the OR. And, about you, it could be just one simple mistake, or it could be just one thing you didn't do. So, yeah, so going back to always treat, that account as if it was your first day with that account. And also, like, it doesn't matter if you have a $2,000 sell or $1 million sell, treat them the same. I've always done that with my career, because the $2,000 sell can always turn into the $1 million sell in the future.
That's a great point. How important do you think it is for reps to nurture strong partnerships and relationships, like in the hospital outside of the surgeon? Because again, like, you might have a day where you don't get there on time or something happens. Like, talk to us a little bit about that.
It's so important, because I always say, I always tell people, the scrub and the staff can make or break you. Like, it doesn't matter how good you are as a rep. It doesn't matter how smart you are as a rep. If the staff doesn't like you, you're done, because they're going to make sure to make your obviously your experience not a positive one if they don't like you. So always making sure that even though you're going after the surgeon, obviously, you want to work with, or you want to be nice to the people around them, because they can literally, it could be as easy as like, oh, sorry, your tray has a hole in it, so we're gonna have to reprocess it. It's gonna take 4 hours. It's like one of those things. Or the scrub is like, oops, I accidentally dropped this. Do you have a backup? No, I don't. Oh, sorry. Now what are we gonna do? You're always gonna be the one looking bad, because you're almost like you're almost an outsider when you're a rep, right? So you definitely want to have a good relationship with the staff, because they have the ability to make or break you.
It's so true. And even me, when I was a rep in robotics, there's a lot of reps where they were really obnoxious, and they thought they're like, oh, they were the favorite rep of the surgeon and everything, but the staff hated them. First thing that I would do is I would try to develop a relationship with staff. Like, I remember one staff member, like, it was a surgical tech. I was talking about the robot, and he's like, yeah, maybe I can get the surgeon to use it. I'm like, look, man, I was like, forget about the surgeon for a second. I was like, think about it for yourself. If you get him to convert, like, you're going to get trained robotically, so that in your job, you can add a skill set of leverage, which is, how to run robotic cases, which means that forget about protecting your job here. Like, maybe you want to cover cases in other hospitals. Like, you have leverage that way. I was like, if you're able to help me with that, like, I promise you, I'll make sure that you're part of those trainings.
Yeah.
That was a done deal within 30 days. Right. And I think that, like, again, you could have a rep who, it's on rare occasion that there's a rep with a whole lot of pull with the surgeon. Usually the rep in their own mind, I think you said it earlier, ego. In their mind, they're like, oh, the surgeon loves me, which the surgeon might like you a lot. But if the staff dislikes that person enough, it just takes the right rep to come along, and the staff, it's like a mafia, right? They'll find a way. We're like, yeah, you know what? This new rep, we're going to get a lot more out of them, and they're going to play into our interest a lot more than this current rep. Like, let's figure out how do we, and I like, staff and surgical techs are human beings too. So like, they'll make things feel a little bit more difficult than they need to be, and just be like, oh, doc, like, this thing, this instrument doesn't work that well, or this thing doesn't, it's like, it's not that, it's such a pain. Like, why don't we try this new thing I just keep hearing about? Like, let's just do one case, you know, like, and even though it's a surgeon, like, surgeons are human beings. You have a tribe of 3, 4, 5 people saying the same thing. The surgeons at one day is going to be like, all right, like, let me just do it. It's all it takes, right?
Exactly, especially if it's easier for him because he doesn't have to wait, right? And the staff knows how to use it. I mean, I've been in cases, Omar, because I get along with all the staff, that they're literally doing my job because they like you so much that they want to make your life easier too. So I've had like scrubs that actually I don't even have to tell them what to pull out of my trays. They just do it. Because I've had such a good relationship with them. And guess what? It just makes you look good to the surgeon because the case is now flowing, right?
That's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's such an important thing is having like good, like, it's a good feeling when you're in cases and you're like, it's just like smooth flowing, like just boom, bam, that's it.
And they're your eyes and ears too. So if there's a new surgeon coming into the facility, they're the first ones to tell you. So
that's true. Oh, that's true. Yeah, there's a one of the more like, I was surprised, like one of the really popular TikTok, Instagram reels I created also went on LinkedIn, was like the 2 groups of people that you should like talk to. And it's the two group of people that know everything about the surgeon. It's like the nurses and staff, and then the other reps who work with them, I
even like build relationship with the SPD. I mean,
that's smart. I feel like that's another area. Like, for the new people who are listening, what's SPD and why build a relationship with them?
Yeah, so SPD are the people in charge of making sure your trays are clean and sterilized, and it's so important, obviously, to have a good relationship with them because you need your trays to be sterilized in order for the surgeon to even use it, right? So think about you, let's say, dropping an instrument, or no, the scrub dropping an instrument, or there's a hole in your tray. They can actually make your life miserable by saying, oh, it's going to take 2 hours just to wash it, and then another 2 hours just to cook it, and then it needs another hour for it to cool down. That's 5 hours of the surgeon waiting for him. By that time, the surgeon will be like, is there another company in here? So I just want to get this case over with, right? And so it's important to have those relationships with them because they can really screw you over if they don't like you, and not intentionally, obviously, but make your life hard.
But yeah, I was gonna say not intentionally, but like if anything, like they're not gonna go out of their way to like break process and be like, why I'm not gonna jump your tray in front of all these other trays. So you just gotta wait.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like again, I had situations to where I just need things last minute, and they're like, yeah, we'll come to the hospital at 4 a.m. just to make sure your trays are all set up. I'm like, who does that? Nobody can do that,
Oh, I got a great. So you just reminded me, and I'll share this, and then I want to finish with some rapid fire questions for you. But I have a great tactic for SPD. So when I started as a rep, coming out of medical school, and also my dad's a surgeon. He was in the military, so I had this like respect for like doing the dirty work and like proving yourself. So the first year at this one account, not only did I take the trays, so like after the spine surgery was done, like these are all reusable instruments. Not only did I take it to SPD, I asked like, is it okay if I, help and, clean these? And the SPD is like, yeah, sure, you can do that. So not only did I help, like I would just do it. And so I'd be like at the sink, gowned up, cleaning like bloody instruments, like, it's kind of dangerous actually, like now I think about it, because like, you can prick it, but I was doing all these things, and SPD would like come and be like, hey, no, it's okay. I'll do that. I'm like, no, look, I got you. Like, there's a lot of trays. Let me just help. And on one side of it, they don't want somebody like, they don't want like hospital, like, why is this rep like doing SPD's work? But the fact that I was doing that, and I did it like in a very genuine way, right? It gained a lot of respect, because a lot of people in SPD, like, it's sterile processing. This is not a particularly glamorous job. And so for them to see somebody who's a rep, which they know reps make really good money, willing to help and do that kind of work, like it just like it wins them over immediately.
Oh my God. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I would like separate things for them, make sure like the dirty, the stuff that's been used is
Back
separated.
when you were a distributor, right? Because you didn't have a huge team. You did everything. Yeah.
Yeah, you did everything. So, and they appreciate those things, and they will actually guard your tray, meaning like if another rep is like eyeing your tray or taking instruments out of your tray,
Which happens, right? Sabotage happens.
yes, exactly. They will take care of you. They'll tell you, or they'll stop them from doing it. So it's nice to have those relationships, not just with the surgeon, obviously, but with the staff, with SVD. Even like, I mean, I even have a relationship with the cleaning crew, because right. I mean, because the turnover time goes quicker because they know that I'm going to be. I mean, all those little things that you can do.
That is so true. That's true. This is a great episode. I know that my audience is going to be like, when are you going to have her back? So we'll have to have you back again, because I think the tactics and tips are just like years and years of rep knowledge, But just to kind of wrap things up, I like to do a little rapid fire questions. I'm going to ask you some questions. You can answer them as long as you want or as quickly as you want. Okay. And so let's start with the first one, which is, we talk about the importance of personal development and growth and everything. I know you're a reader, you take courses and everything. What's a book that you feel that you've recommended, and gifted the most to people? And it doesn't have to be sales related, it can be anything. What's a book that you feel like you recommend all the time?
You're actually gonna love me because it is sales related, because now I'm in capital equipment sales. So I actually brought it with me.
Oh my God, you just made my day. You made my day and Jeffrey Moore's day. Crossing the chasm.
Yes, I've been.
Oh man, did you see how excited I got? It's not even my book.
Yeah. I knew you were. I was like, Omar's gonna love this. I gotta bring it.
Oh my God, yeah, you won me over. Why that book? Tell the audience why that book is great.
I mean, first of all, look how thin it is. Look how easy it is to read. I mean, it just gives you like strategies and tactics, and it's straight to the point. There's no, how like certain books, like it takes like 20 chapters before they even get to the good stuff. This one's just so amazing because it really explains the psychology behind how people think and why people buy.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when it comes to high-tech marketing. Jeff Moore's on my podcast, my other podcast called Mindland, which is on book reviews. Jeff Moore, I know I said this is rapid fire, but you picked a hell of a book. So
Yeah,
Jeff Moore, I'm looking at it. He's got, 5 or 6 books. I might be the only person who owns his entire body of work, which is all high-tech marketing, venture capital, technology adoption. And then he writes a new book called The Infinite Staircase, and it has nothing to do with technology. It's all about the metaphysics behind the meaning of life and where you fit in the universe. It's like, and only a guy like him can write like that. So buy Crossing the Chasm, but then also go buy The Infinite Staircase. It's a really good one. And I'll send him this clip. He'll love it.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. Next question. We spend a lot of time in the car. We listen to a lot of things. Is there a podcast that you've been listening to lately that, you've been enjoying a lot, or podcasts in the past? Do you listen to podcasts even? I should have started with that.
Right. I do. You know what I've been doing actually, Omar, is I do listen to a lot of different podcasts. What I've been doing though, for me, the quickest way to learn is to listen, right? Mm-hmm. If I listen to it over and over and over and over, one of these days I'm going to learn it. So I've been recording, of course I'll ask for their permission, but I've been recording sales meetings, and I will just listen to it over and over in my car. And, that I haven't really listened to podcasts in a little bit, except for your podcast.
So you're recording your own sales meetings and
recording my own sales meetings, and even like any presentations or any training courses in my line of work. And I would just listen to it over and over.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. That's such good advice. And I think, again, I don't think enough reps do that because they rely on their company to come up with processes. But, I tell reps, I'm like, record all your Zooms and watch them, because how else are you going to get better about your pitch? Like, it could be that you're doing the right presentation, but your intonation's off, the way you said something, the way you looked, something, right? I mean, it's not fun. I've done over 130 sales meetings just in the last year. I don't like watching myself over and over again, but like, that's the only way you get better. So that's actually, I'm actually going to do that. I need to do that and listen to them in the car. That's a good one.
Yep.
That's awesome. And you just like, you export it as like a MP3 to your phone and, oh, that's solid. See, there's a reason why you're on this show. I think you're actually the first, I think you're, no, yeah, technically you're the first rep on the show, believe it or not.
Oh,
I had another rep before, but it was mainly on like how to get into the industry. So this is you're the first one on here, and it's for good reason. It's like you're an A player. Okay. Last question for you is, throughout your career, you've had a lot of different mentors and everything that have helped you. What is the most painful thing somebody told you that actually changed you for the better?
Oh, it's funny because I'm going to have to talk about your video that I saw when I was, in a big, huge transition in my career and in my life, is when you said something to where you can't blame anybody else for, for your lack of growth. And that really hit me hard because I was blaming other people. Oh, it's because my boss didn't invest in me, or because of COVID, or because of this. And it's incorrect because you still have control over your life. And, the moment I did that, when I saw that clip, I'm like, I'm to blame why I'm not growing, because all I was doing was complaining about why I wasn't growing. So yeah, that hit me hard. That's why I bought Omar.
Wow. That's a first of like the hundreds of I've done, because I've started so many different podcast shows at companies, my own. That's the first time I'm the answer to that question. That's awesome. I need to run that video more often because I haven't run that in a long time. I should probably start running that again. That's perfect. Well, Gyda, I'm going to, again, for people who are listening, give Gyda a follow. If you look up Gyda Liveras on Google, you'll find her LinkedIn, her TikTok, her Instagram. I highly recommend following her. I'm going to leave links to all her stuff below in the show notes. But last thing, Gyda, is that if there is a big billboard that every rep sees before they go into work for a whole year, and they get a notification on their phone every day before they go to work, what message do you put on that and why?
I would put give to give, but not give to get. Because I feel like, when you're selling, a lot of people tend to be the salesperson versus a partner. I mean, the way I look at it is like you're trying to build relationships as if, you're going to be your business partner, right? So a lot of times, people don't want to be sold to. So if your intentions are, I just want to get the business, you're never going to get the business. So you have to learn how to give in order to get.
It's fantastic. I can't think of a better way to wrap up. Gyda Liveras, everyone. Gyda, thank you so much for joining. This has been another episode of the State of MedTech. Be sure to give Gyda a follow. And if you're a repeat listener of the show and you haven't given us a rating, shame on you. Go hit that button. Give us 5 stars. Write us a quick review. We are climbing the charts. We're actually in the top 1% of healthcare and medicine podcasts. I want to get us to the top 10, so help us out. Have a great week, and we'll see you all next time.